Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to Wide Area Application Services Troubleshooting. We're glad to have you with us. A few housekeeping notes to begin. As you entered the WebEx console, you either joined us by audio broadcast or by phone, which was automatically muted. Because of our large audience in attendance today, you will remain muted throughout the event. When you have a question, please feel free to enter it into the WebEx Q&A panel as you think of them. You can find the Q&A panel in the bottom right-hand corner of the console. Please leave the WebEx chat window for communication to our WebEx facilitators for any problems or issues you may be experiencing. We would appreciate your input regarding today's webcast, and a short survey will appear when you close your browser at the end of the event. At this time, I'd like to turn the program over to our host, Francine Richards. Francine?
Hello and welcome to the Cisco Support Community. Today we present a live Cisco Support Community Expert Series webcast event. During our event today, our topic will be Wide Area Application Services Troubleshooting. Again, my name is Francine Richards and I'm the Project Manager for the Cisco Support Community here at Cisco. Our expert joining me today is Bhavin Yadav, a Senior Customer Support Engineer, Technical Lead specialized in Cisco WAS and WCCP deployments. Welcome, Bhavin.
Thank you, Ria, and thank you, Francine. Welcome to the WAS troubleshooting session here. My name is Bhavin. I work with WAS troubleshooting, WAS customer support engineer, and I'm going to present you a few things here on how to do WAS troubleshooting, what you can do yourself, and how to get to the resolution quickly.
Okay, so I'm going to briefly outline the format for today's Expert Series event. Bhavin will start with a short presentation on WAS troubleshooting for the first 25 minutes of the program. And then we will dive into the live question submissions for the remainder of the event. During our live presentation, you may submit questions to be answered by Bhavin and a team of Cisco technical experts using the Q&A box on the right side of your console. The team of technical experts is well versed in Cisco WAS technologies, so please begin posting your questions now, and to give us the best chance of answering them. If you experience any technical issues, please post your question in the chat. We'll be asking polling questions during this webcast, and we highly encourage you to participate by answering them. You may also download a copy of today's PDF presentation using the link in the chat window. And now we'll get started with today's event. We're going to start it off with a polling question. What is your level of experience in troubleshooting WAS? I theoretically know WAS, but no practical experience. I know WAS concepts, but rarely work with WAS for troubleshooting purposes. I know basic troubleshooting, but no idea about WAS-specific troubleshooting. I know most of the WAS concepts and know what to collect and when. So if you'll please take a moment to answer, as this will give Bob an opportunity to tailor his presentation to your needs. Please make sure to submit your questions as we will answer them later in the webcast. Now I would like to hand the mic to Bhavin, who will give you an expert advice on how to troubleshoot WAS.
Thanks again, Francine. Welcome to the webcast. My name is Bhavin again. We are going to go through the WAS troubleshooting today. This will include basic troubleshooting skills or information that we need, what information to collect during the troubleshooting sessions if you encounter any issues, troubleshooting tools that we have in WAS, various logs and CLI commands to help us do the troubleshooting. We'll also go through major application optimizations troubleshooting, and at the end we'll have some summary kind of thing. So what is covered in this webcast today is we'll help you understand the troubleshooting flow. How can you do primary diagnosis yourself before you contact the Cisco TAC or open a TAC case? Troubleshoot yourself without interrupting the production traffic, which is a key point here because most of the WAS deployments are in production most of the time. What data to collect before troubleshooting, and that will help Cisco expedite the resolution by providing them the right logs collected at the right time. Starting checkpoints. First major key point is this really WAS problem? A lot of time we see the customers raising the issues like slow network traffic or performance issue or kind of thing, where it's really not WAS issue, but it goes into the routing issues a lot of time. So we want to make sure that is this really a VAS problem. The second thing is asymmetric routing. Make sure you have the client SYN, CNAC, ACK, the three-way TCP handshake packet goes through the VAS at the remote side as well as the server side. Then onto the modified policies, VAS has default policies defined inside every appliance, every VAS unit. Make sure those default policies are not modified, or if they are modified, they are acting as per your expectation. Resource crunch, yeah, this means we have to make sure the VAS is not hitting the connection limit by any chance. Pre-compressed traffic, lot of time customers try to optimize the traffic which is pre-compressed. For example, the zip file. That may not give you the optimum result through the VAS, and your percentage of optimization may be lower. Peer issues, a lot of time we see the two VAS devices cannot talk to each other for any reason. That's something we need to look into it. Traffic flow through VPN, firewall, security devices. When you have a VPN encryption between site, you have a firewall, you have any other security devices, for example, IPS, IDS, that may strip off auto discovery option that gets injected into the SYN packet in every TCP session that goes through the VAS. Then we have encryption. We have to make sure the traffic is not hitting VAS in encrypted way, or it's not encrypted before it hits VAS. Digitally signed traffic, in case of safes, make sure it's not digitally signed, which in all those cases the traffic, it may be something else, not the VAS. So here's a polling question.
Okay, what is the first thing you do when you encounter issues with WAS? You try to understand the problem yourself. You can Google around. You ask for help from a WAS expert person in your group. You look at show TAC and alarms, or you open a TAC case with Cisco. Again, if you could submit your response now.
Thank you, Francine. So let's keep moving on to the next slide. What's the troubleshooting process we should follow when we have any issues with the performance or VAS related? We want to make sure we write a clear problem statements. We see a lot of time a very generic statement that says performance issues or slow traffic, that kind of thing. But it's really important to understand the problem and write it very clearly. What exactly is the slow? Is it SIFs? Is it only HTTP? Is it site-to-site or multi-site? All those kind of things. So to narrow down and write a clear problem statement, we need to collect few facts here. How many sites are affected? Is this one site issue or multi-site issue? Is this one server problem or multi-server problem? Is this affecting one user or one subnet or one network or multiple networks? We can also narrow down the list of possible problems or causes by looking at if there is any recent network device installation or uninstallation, any unexpected reboot or reroute of any of the routers or VAS devices, any new server installations that could cause a problem, any new site that has been added recently to the network infrastructure, any change in access lists or gateways. All these variables will help us narrow down and write a clear problem statement. If any variable changes, we should collect the facts again and all the numbers again. Troubleshooting software issues. There are software version issues. We have seen a lot of time customers using a wrong image on the center manager. For example, you should be running the latest image on the center manager in your VAS infrastructure. We also have to make sure that we select right image. Nowadays, there are images for accelerator only. There's a universal image, which means you can use it on application as application accelerator as well as on center manager. There are NPE images for which you cannot use secure store and all that kind of encryption. SMSRE blades have specific images for themselves too. So we have to make sure we have a right image. Troubleshooting hardware issues. Boot up issues. Watch the boot up sequence very carefully with console and monitor connected. Initial boot will log to the monitor that's on the display, and then it will switch to console only output. That means VGA display will terminate when it starts booting Linux somewhere in the middle of the booting process. We should not think that the VAS has hung up, or it's not acting, or it's not doing anything. The VGA display will terminate on halfway, almost at the halfway during the boot up process. And from that point onwards, you should be monitoring or looking at the console connection. We also do not suggest changing any BIOS settings, because change in any BIOS settings, for example, boot order or disable, you can also disable logging to console. We do not suggest any changes to those things. Check disk and RAID health. Also, the firmware version of the RAID controller. You can use show disk details or show disk tech support CLI commands to check the RAID health or the disk health. Check syslog.txt for boot and failure messages. Syslog.txt is the file where VAS is going to log all the messages, all the generic messages, and you can browse through the syslog.txt file to find any boot or any failure messages. You can use CLI command, something like type-tail space syslog.txt and the number of lines that you want to see, the last few lines that you want to see. You can specify 80 or 100 or 500. How to collect show tech from VAS? You can use commands, CLI command, copy tech support, and then you can dump the show tech to disk itself on the VAS itself, or you can also directly TFTP to your TFTP server. You can also log the output of screen to a text file and use command show tech support. Collect sys report from VAS. There are multiple ways to generate and collect the sys report from VAS. From the CLI, you can use the command copy sysreport FTP and put in the FTP server credentials like IP address, the directory, the username, and everything. Or you can also dump the sysreport to the local disk on VAS using command copy sysreport disk and then the file name. Later on, you can download this file from the VAS directly using FTP server. One thing that you want to make sure is make sure FTP is enabled on the VAS to allow you to connect using FTP. You can also download sysreports using GUI. Just point your browser to https://weip port 8443. Then onto the GUI, move your mouse to Cisco WAE Utilities Support and then select full and then download. That will download the full sysreport. One thing we want to mention here is during the download of the sysreport, not only the download but also generation of the sysreport, the performance, it may impact the performance of the VAS depending on the load on the VAS. So it's not a good option to generate a sysreport always, but in some circumstances we have seen issues when you generate sysreport on the production box. Collect crash or core dump files from VAS. A lot of time when there is an issue with a particular application optimizer like Sieves or HTTP, or if there's a Java failure, anything that will cause or create a core file or crash file on VAS. The crash file will be generated and saved under /localone/crash/x folder. The core files will be saved under /localone/core_dir. The background process is running on the VAS will automatically zip up them in .gz format. You can download those files from those folders using FTP. Make sure to turn on the binary mode before you start downloading those files. Any core file or a crash file presence in that folder will raise an alarm on the VAS with saying core dump file found or crash file found. Core file names will be similar to file name, something like core.process.buildversion.cnbuild.pid, which is process ID. For example, core.snmpced.4.13b.b9.cnbuild.5132, which means this core file was generated for SNMP process, and VAS was running 4.1.3b code at that time, and process ID for SNMP was 5132. It's very important not to modify the file name of the core dump file or crash file. It's very, very important to keep the original file format or file name format. Moving to the next slide, let's do some troubleshooting. Let's see some troubleshooting with VAS and WCCP. If we configure VAS with WCCP, we have to make sure to register to the router's local interface address if the WCCP client is layer 2 adjacent. If it's not layer 2 adjacent, make sure to use router's highest loopback address. This is not must, but this is a good practice. Also, make sure you do not register to router's virtual address, something like HSRP or GLBP or VRRP. When I say do not register, that means please do not use this IP address in the WCCP config command on VAS. Try to use the local loopback address or the directly connected local interface. WCCP troubleshooting, we have to make sure the services are configured correctly on the VAS. For example, GRE, L2, hash, or mask assignment. This means we have to look into the router, a model, hardware, or software version, and make sure that is supported in the hardware and software version that we are running on the router side. We have to make sure the service groups are configured properly on proper interfaces. For example, WCCP 61 or 62 needs to be configured on the correct interfaces where you really want to redirect the traffic to VAS. Redirect exclude in statement is must to avoid any routing loops, especially when you are using redirect in and redirect out on the same interface on the router. Interfaces are configured correctly on VAS and iOS side, and that's another thing that we have to make sure it's properly defined. Here's the link. This is a pretty good document if you want to find what is supported under what kind of WCCP parameters are supported under what platform and the iOS version. This is pretty good white paper. If you encounter any issues with WCCP, here are the CLI commands that you can use and collect the information for. Cisco Tech will also ask you to collect this kind of generic information if you see any issues with WCCP. Show WCCP GRE will help you check the counters on the VAS if VAS is receiving any traffic from the router to make sure you have defined the redirection properly. Show WCCP router to check the routers connected to the WAE. Show WCCP wide area engine. If you have multiple WAEs in the WCCP farm, which one is a lead WAE? That will help us to decide on which WAE is designing the bucket assignment and everything. On the iOS router or switch, show IP WCCP, show IP WCCP service ID, service, and then show IP WCCP service ID detail. Show IP WCCP interface detail to give you more details on the interfaces being used for WCCP redirection. Please note that not all commands are available in all iOS versions. Some of the commands are hardware and software version specific, but these are kind of generic commands that we should be looking at. WCCP debugs. We can enable debugs on router as well as on the VAS side. Please note that these are only WCCP debugs, not the debug for the actual traffic that is being redirected, which means we will only see here IM and ICU messages between router and the VAS device, not the actual traffic. You can use commands like debug IP WCCP packet or debug IP WCCP events on the router side, and you can use debug WCCP all on the VAS side. You can also run packet capture on VAS device over UDP port 2048. That is, UDP port 2048 is used by WCCP for the control messages. Inline troubleshooting. If you have inline deployment, Please make sure the cabling is fine, crossover, you're using the right crossover or straight cable. Speed and duplex settings are defined properly between the router or switch and the VAS inline card. You can also check the LED status. The syslog.txt also shows the inline card detected during boot up logs. Show hardware will also show you how many inline cards are detected. Show interface inline group will show you if it's correcting under correct mode. Show interface inline port will show you if the ports are up and running. The inline card is configured correctly and monitoring the correct VLANs. Make sure it's monitoring the correct VLANs under the inline deployment. Now moving on to major application optimization troubleshooting. Auto discovery troubleshooting, we have to make sure the policy engine definition is correct on both peer devices. If you are trying to optimize the connection using the SIFs, we have to make sure the right policy is applied and the policy is same on both sides, and the SIFs is enabled under both the VAS devices. Classifiers have correct matching criteria and in correct order. The classifiers need to have right IP address for the client as well as for the server, or if you are using port, make sure you have right port configured. One tricky thing here that we have found is when you put in subnet mask value and criteria for the classifier, you have to use wildcard mask, not the normal subnet mask. So for example, for /24 subnet, we have to put in 0.0.0.255 as a wildcard mask there. You can also use show statistics auto discovery CLI command to find any potential issues with the auto discovery option, or if the WAE is not getting auto discovered by the peer WAE. If you want to see if the connection is being optimized pass through or it's in auto discovery mode, you can use show statistics connection and apply the filter. The filter you can use client IP, server IP, connection ID, closed or optimized connection or pass-through connection. We can also use client port or server port as a filter here. We can also use packet captures on the router or on the VAS to make sure we see, or the VAS device sees the complete three-way handshake between the VAS devices itself. Avoid asymmetric routing. This is the major issue that we have seen a lot of time the customers encountering it. Since CNAC must go through the VAS devices on both sides that you want to optimize the connection between. We also have to make sure the TFO options are negotiated correctly and connections are being optimized. Auto discovery troubleshooting. A lot of time we see the two devices are not able to auto discover each other because of firewall or IPS or IDS devices in the middle. We can use a CLI command, something like show statistics TFO detail or show statistics connection, and apply the filter that we specified in the previous slide. We also have to make sure that if the problem happens only with the TFO enabled, and how about DRE or LZ, or if there is an issue with CIFS or HTTP or any other application optimizers, we can turn them off one by one and make sure it's the auto discovery issue. We can also use the command something like show statistics connection and apply the filter with the detail option at the end to see the details of that connection. That means we'll see a whole lot of details. Sometimes those details are too much, but Cisco TAC, but it's very useful for the Cisco TAC. Moving on to the next one. DRE, that's data redundancy elimination, and persistent LEMPLZ, that's zip PLZ or zip troubleshooting. We can use commands like show stat connection, again filter detail, or show stat pure DRE detail to find out the details or the negotiations between two peers. We can also use show statistics DRE detail command to review the global DRE and PLZ statistics on local VAS. make sure to check out compression or encryption, which have little redundancy or compressibility, and that could poison the DRE cache with unusable data. Center manager troubleshooting. You have to make sure the device is configured as a center manager and not as application accelerator. VAS generally talks to the center manager over port 443 when you register the VAS unit to the center manager. That port needs to be open between VAS and the center manager. If you have multiple center managers, they talk to each other over port 8443. You can also generate or backup the CMS database on the center manager. You can, if you have any issues with VAS registration with any device, or if there is any other issues with the registration of the VAS in your network, we can collect those backup and send it to the lab device and reproduce a problem to see what's going on. Tools for analyzing connectivity. These are very generic tools, ping, telnet, SSH, traceroute. We can use ICMP based, the ping is ICMP based, so it's not going to get redirected through the VAS over the WCCP. We can also use ping with different size packets to identify the best MTU between the two sites if we see any fragmentation or anything. Telnet is another thing that we can use to really see if the connection is going through the VAS. It works. We can use Telnet to customize to the customized port and check the connectivity and verify the connection through the VAS. SSH is another option that we have to see if the connection is going through the VAS. Of course, it will not be optimized fully, but we can see if the connection is going through the VAS through the WCCP redirection. Traceroute, again, is something like ping. We can use traceroute to find out if we have any asymmetric routing issues, but again, traceroute packets are not going to go through WCCP redirection, so we cannot use it we can not use this tool to confirm the asymmetric routing or if there are any redirection issues. Here's another polling question for the participants.
Okay. Which application optimization AO do you encounter the most issues with? Common Internet File System, CIFS, Messaging Application Programming Interface, MAPI, HTTP Optimization, Secure Sockets Layer, SSL, or generic? So go ahead and please post your answers to that. And also remember to submit your questions now so that we can answer them a little later in our webcast.
Thank you, Francine. So let's keep moving to the next slide while we are waiting for the polling results to come out. So what are the standard data set for any AO troubleshooting? These are very generic options or generic commands. It's not specific to CIFS or HTTP or SSL or anything. Packet captures of the problem replication. That means complete end-to-end. A complete end-to-end set of packet captures from beginning to the end of test, which will capture the failure or the problem inside, and often it's the best way to identify and isolate the root cause. We also should take sys report immediately before and after the test to help us narrow down the numbers or look at the parameters before and after the test. When you do the test, once you collect the numbers and everything, the packet captures, it's important to collect client IP address, server IP address, file, and the folder details in case if you are troubleshooting the CIFS issue. Server details or client details. When I say server details, that means OS that the server is running, the client, what's the OS on the client side, Windows XP, Windows 7, whatever. And is this capture or set of logs showing us the failure or success? Often if you see one client working and the other client not working, often it's good to collect the packet capture for the working as well as the non-working scenario to help Cisco attack narrow down the problem quickly by differentiating the logs and the packet captures. Standard CLI commands for any AO configurations. We have to make sure the AO is licensed. For example, CIFS, HTTP, they all need enterprise license. You can use a show accelerator and AO name. Also, we want to make sure that it's enabled under the configuration. View statistics for failure reasons. We can use show statistics accelerator, CIFS detail, or MAPI detail to get us the result of the failures. That will this CLI will give you something like 10-15 line CLI output with all the various options. Policies are configured correctly. A lot of time we see the policies, default policies being modified. You can run command show running config pipe include CIFS to show you the CIFS related policies if the default policies are modified. If you have any customized policies, you can use those customized policies here and put in that name here in the filter. Check alarm history, show alarm history detail will show you the history of all the all the alarms that WAS has gone through in the past, or if it's going through any problem right now. Standard AO troubleshooting, again, if we also have to make sure if to look into other options, something like, is this connection failing or is it slow with AO enable? When it says failing means, for example, your client cannot connect to the server completely, or the client is able to connect to the server but it's slow. So those kind of things will help us narrow down the problem. Can you see if this site or application failed with only TFO, DRE, and LZ option? That means defining a customized policy for that particular client or server and starting a new connection to see if it's really an AO issue or it's also failing when we apply TFO, DRE, or LZ. The other thing is if the issue continues even with TFO, DRE, LZ, we can define a customized policy, again, to bypass the connection on the WAS. When we bypass the connection on the WAS, that particular TCP connection will be in pass-through and WAS will act as a layer 2 bridge. If the connection still fails, then it's not a WAS issue. It may be something else, but it's definitely not a WAS issue. I'm talking about a very generic situation. To disable AO from the equation, we could do one of the following. We can disable AO globally, or we can create a custom classifier or policy for certain traffic not to use that particular AO, as I mentioned before. We can also use client IP or server port to create a policy to allow pass-through traffic. We can also use different other various parameters inside the classifier to define a specific policy or classifier for our troubleshooting. If the problem continues with TFO or TFO-LZ or TFO-DRE-LZ, then we can troubleshoot from that perspective. It could be duplex mismatch a lot of time, network issues, something like asymmetric routing, or high CPU utilization on the router or switch side, or firewall issues, or something like IDS, IPS, or packet shipper changing the packet when it goes through those devices. Certain applications may not like repacketization due to TFO and DRE options. So we have to make sure if we have any packet shipper or any other devices, it's not modifying the internal packet or the data in the data payload. Creating policy is a good way, as that is less disruptive to other traffic and under controlled environmental testing. We can create a policy under the central manager for that particular device, and that is a good way, because when you create a policy or put in any policy, that will start affecting the new connection that will hit the WAS, and it will not affect any other traffic going through the WAS. So this is a very good point here when you want to do some control environment testing on a production box without affecting any other traffic. troubleshooting SSL AO. So those are kind of generic commands that we can use for HTTP, for SAPes, for NFS, all of those application optimizers. For SSL AO, we have few specific commands for SSL related SSL troubleshooting. Show CMS Secure Store to make sure that Secure Store is initialized and open. Check alarms for any certificate or Secure Store issues. Show alarm history detail will again help us here. We have to make sure that the SSL accelerated services and certificates are defined correctly in the Center Manager GUI. Commands we can apply on the VAS directly. Show crypto SSL services accelerated service, or show crypto certificates to give us all the other issues on the details of the certificates and if there are any issues with those. We have to check that the dynamic policy is active on the core WIE. SSL dynamic policies are defined on SSL accelerated services, and it should be active on the core WIE. We can use CLI command show policy engine application dynamic. The other good point to note here is we have to make sure the DNS is configured properly and all names and addresses resolve forward as well as on the reverse direction. And those DNS names are matching in the certificate that we have submitted to the VAS Center Manager. Here are a couple of good references if you want to go through it. Support forums under the discussion panel. There are a lot of discussions customers put in their questions, and Cisco TAC. A lot of other customers answer the questions. Configuration guides are good. This URL will take you to the configuration guides directly for all the versions. You can go through your particular version or the latest one. Release notes are a good one to make sure you are not hitting any known issues before you plan on any upgrade or installation. Reference guides to help you with the CLI commands. Error and system messages to help you understand what are the alarms and what that alarm means with reference to the VAS troubleshooting. Yeah, go ahead, Fran.
Thanks, Bhavin.
Sorry.
I want to also encourage you at this time to go ahead and submit any questions you have to the chat window. We'll be answering those in a few minutes. So we have a last polling question here. How useful was this presentation? This was very informative presentation and will help me during my day-to-day WAS issues. The presentation needed more in-depth details. I wanted to see some information on configuration. This presentation was somewhat useful. This presentation was not useful to me. So go ahead and take a moment to answer those questions, and also, again, submit any questions you have to the chat window so that we can answer that.
One thing here for this polling question is very important for us is to find out what we should present in the future presentations for if there is any VAS troubleshooting session. So I personally highly encourage you to feed in your options here. That will help us into defining the next presentation for us.
Yeah, thank you, Bhavin. So I want to thank Bhavin for a great presentation. I also want to thank everyone for participating in the event polling. It's time to answer a few of our questions that the viewers have submitted today. And by the way, if you can't stay with us for the Q&A, please be sure to click on the evaluation link provided in the chat to let us know how this session met your business needs and expectations. Now we're going to go ahead and start the Q&A. Bhavin, during production hours, what is the safest way to bypass the affected traffic? Creating policy or turning off application optimizer, turning off redirection completely? Bhavin?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. So there are multiple ways we can bypass the traffic. Creating policy is the safest way because the creating policy will not affect any existing traffic going through the VAS. It's only going to affect the new session that will come in for the policy that has been created. turning off redirection completely or turning off application optimizer or, for example, CIFS or HTTP will affect the traffic going through that particular application optimizer at that time. So it will affect even the good traffic that is going through the WAS.
Thank you. And we have another question. Why we can't register to the HSRP addresses?
The reason why we should not register the HSRP addresses because those are bound to, it's a virtual address between two routers. It's not a static address. That HSRP address may flip to router 2 or router 1 depending on the load balancing or the demand. So we should not, it's not a good idea. You can register it, but it's not a good practice to register to any HSRP address.
Okay. And we have another question. Do you have any WAS design guides, especially if a site has a dual-homed environment, means a spoke site has two routers and one way?
Well, yeah, absolutely. If you go through the configuration guides, I believe chapter number 2 or 3 talks about planning your WAS network, where you can find out where it gives the details of if you have multiple routers or multiple WAS devices at any of your sites.
Okay. And how hard is a system report generation can affect the WAS production?
System report generation can affect WAS, the production traffic. It depends again on the situation. If the WAS is going through high CPU cycle, maybe 80-90% or 100%, or if there's a memory issue, it may crash or create a core file for you. So we don't encourage generating sys report on a heavily loaded box kind of thing, but in some cases we have to do it. Because sys report gives us a very good idea on what issue is going through it. And it's very important to collect the sys report while the issue is happening, to collect the live statistics, because WAS is not going to keep the history of details of that issue. It will raise an alarm, we'll see the alarm, but not all the history will be logged once the issue disappears.
And another question here, are WCCP debugs safe to run on production box? And can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, WCCP debugs are safe most of the time because those are the messages, like one message every 10 seconds to 15 seconds for every WAE device. So it's not a heavy, traffic. That's something that could bog down the router or the WAS device. But again, if your router is hitting 100% CPU or it's on high CPU utilization, we definitely do not suggest turning on WCCP debugs on the router side. On WAS side, yeah, again, it's the same call. If you have any high CPU utilization or memory issue, please do not run WCCP debugs, although they are very small in amount.
And would you set up in a WAE environment one site with WCCP and the other site inline?
Oh yeah, absolutely fine. That will work as normal as it can, because on one side WCCP, using WCCP or inline, those are kind of redirection techniques that you can use. Inline means all of your traffic is going through the WAS. In WCCP, you are probably redirecting some of or selected traffic through the WAS. So you can have WCCP running at one side and inline running on the other side. That's fine as far as the packet goes through the WAS on both sides to make sure it's not asymmetric routing.
And if my WAE is hung, what can be done to recover it?
When you say hung again, so there are multiple things. The first thing that we suggest is to hook up a console cable before you turn it off, because a lot of time console connections are going to give you some output or something. It will show up something on the console command, on the console window. If you cannot access WAE by any chance, if the console is blocked or telnet or your HTTP session is gone, then the only option is to turn off and turn on without doing any further troubleshooting. It will, one thing to note here is it will reset any active sessions going through the box when you turn off the box. It will reset, put them in pass-through, because the WOE at that moment will act as a layer 2 bridge, and then when the WOE comes back up in a normal state, it will start optimizing the new connections that will go through the VAS, but it will leave the existing connections in the pass-through mode. This is a key point here. Any existing connections will remain in pass-through mode. Any new connections, when the VAS is back to normal, will be optimized, or VAS will take the action according to the defined policies or classifiers.
And we have a question here: how to troubleshoot when a particular application traffic is passed through?
When a particular application traffic is in pass-through mode, there are multiple reasons why the traffic can be in pass-through mode. It may be asymmetric routing. It may be the policy or the classifier defined accordingly. It may be it's not redirecting through the WCCP directly. In other words, WCCP statement is not defined on the interface where the traffic is supposed to redirect to the VAS. So in case of asymmetric routing, when you look at the best way to troubleshoot this kind of issue is to look at show stat connection. That's show statistics connection pipe include the client IP, and using this command, initiate open up two Telnet or SSH sessions, one to the remote side, one to the data center side VAS unit, and on both Telnet or SSH sessions, type in this command: show statistics connection pipe include the IP address, and start the test. If you see the connection on one VAS and you don't see on the other VAS, that means it's not passing through that particular VAS device. If you see connections on both sides, but if it's an asymmetric traffic, asymmetric routing issue, then what you will see is PT asymmetric after a few seconds under the detailed connection. And that PT asymmetric will change into PT pass-through after about 30 to 45 seconds. Automatically, it will change the state from PT asymmetric to PT pass-through. That is a time to find out if it's a asymmetric routing. You can also use a command if you want to see how many asymmetric routes you have the VAS is going through. You can also use a command like show tech support pipe include asymmetric with capital A. That will give you the total number of asymmetric connections going through the VAS or how many are active. So those are a couple of things that you can look into, and those are a couple of reasons why the traffic can be in pass-through. If the traffic is in pass-through because of the policy, the reason it will show up under show stat connection pipe include IP address command is it will show you PT policy pass-through. So it will tell you if this is because of the defined policy at any of the WOE, as the remote WOE or the core WOE. That tells you that this is because of the VAS, because of the policy defined on the VAS.
And how can I monitor the health of the WAE device using SNMP?
You can definitely enable SNMP alerts on the VAS directly. There is under the configuration guide, again, there is a SNMP configuration help, all the options for the SNMP. You can download the different MIBs that you need for the SNMP configuration. You can use those MIBs on your SNMP server to understand the alerts from the SNMP from the VAS. If you go through the configuration guide, there is a URL that will point you to where to download the MIBs for that particular for those VAS version or the hardware or the software related, as well as it will also show you the steps on how to define SNMP on VAS device.
And my WAE keeps reloading. What can I do?
The best way to troubleshoot this kind of issue is log the console output, connect console cable, log the console output, and look at which point it keeps on reloading. It may be a disk failure, it may be a corrupt image, or it may be happening because of unexpected reload or shutdown on the unit, abnormal shutdown of the unit. So we have to narrow down at which point it's reloading. It starts the reloading the process. The one way to recover is to use a recovery disk. You can boot the VAS device using the recovery disk. You can download the ISO image from the support website for the particular VAS version and create burn a CD and use the CD, and you boot the WAE device using that CD, and there's a recovery process again under configuration guide under maintaining your VAS system. You will see there are like 6 or 7 options that will show you when the device boots through the CD. You can use those step-by-step process and recover the unit. One thing to make sure is when you use recovery CD, you are most probably going to lose your configuration or DRE partitions and everything. So make sure you have the configuration backed up or available before you start rebuilding, because it's not going to save any of those options for you.
Okay, we have a couple more minutes to answer a few more questions. Can you explain the different egress methods on the WAE, and are there any best practices on that?
Different egress methods on WAE, you can use GRE or L2, those kind of things, or you can also use when you have a single subnet or single VLAN network in which you have VAS as well as the router, you can use the different egress method, redirection method, and define on the VAS itself on what you want to use specifically. Do you want to use GRE or L2 or hash or mask? If you want to customize the masking value, you can use that command again on the VAS side. One thing we should note here is all the WCCP related commands, all the WCCP related things, everything is controlled by VAS. Nothing is on the router. Router is just accepting the packets from the VAS and then defining or acting accordingly if it can support those redirections or hash or mask or the value.
Okay, and we have enough time to briefly answer 2 more questions. When is encrypted MAPI going to be supported?
Encrypted MAPI, it's somewhere in the product roadmap, but unfortunately, I'm not the best person to answer that. It's in the product roadmap, so you probably want to contact your Cisco partner or Cisco sales engineer or account manager to get update on that, because they are the people who put in all these product feature requests, and they can give you some deadline or idea about when it's coming to the product line.
Okay, and one last question. To set up a software update on a large WAE network, would you roll out the update via Central Manager, or is it more to save the update on the WAE devices manually?
Yeah, that's a good one, and it's really tricky. It's really good to define a proper deployment method when you have, let's say, 50 or 100 devices to upgrade over the remote to the at the remote locations over the slower speed. Maybe it's a T1 or T3, and you are pushing out something about 200 to 400 meg of size to that WAE. One thing here we can do, and VAS is very particular in that, and it's very helpful, is you can define an update job in the center manager. And when you define a job in the center manager, you define whether you only want to download the image to that VAS, or you also want to download and upgrade the image. So you can define your options when you create a job on the center manager. If let's say if you only want to upgrade the particular VAS at midnight, you can define that job to be executed at midnight and send that image right at the midnight time, the time you define, and then depending on the job options, it will reload or just install the image, but it will not reboot itself. You can also take this option on a production box. I don't suggest that, but you can also execute it. Like you can download and install the image on the VAS and then reload during your maintenance window or later in the off business hours. So there are a couple of good things you can do when you define a job under the Center Manager, and it's the best way to use a Center Manager for upgrading a large VAS deployment.
Thank you, Bhavin. That's going to pretty much conclude our Q&A portion of today's event. There is an evaluation survey to complete at the end of this event, and the first 5 listeners to complete that evaluation survey will receive a $20 gift card. So we'll appreciate that if you fill out that survey. We are also going to be hosting an Ask the Expert event on WASP now until November 18th. We have a couple experts that will be hosting that, along with Bhavin, who will be monitoring that event during the week. If you have additional questions, please log on to the Cisco support community and click on the Expert Corner tab at the top and post your question on the proper event. If you have not explored the Cisco support community, you should take a moment to check out this excellent resource at https://supportforums.cisco.com. We also have a couple of different webcast events coming up in different languages. The first one is going to be in Spanish, and the topic is going to be Cisco Unified Communications Networks Upgrade. It's going to take place on Tuesday, November 29th at 7 a.m. PST time and 9 a.m. Eastern. You can register for this live webcast at the following URL that is posted here on this slide. The second webcast is going to be in English, and it's on a very hot topic by a top expert in the industry. It's on service provider IPv6 deployment, and Salman Azadullah, he is a Cisco Distinguished Support Engineer and CCIE, and he has written several books and co-authored several RFCs. He's going to be the host for that event, and it will take place on Tuesday, December 6th at 8 a.m. Pacific time, which is 11 a.m. Eastern, or 4 p.m. in London. So you can register at www.ciscolive.com/ATE. The third webcast is going to be in Japanese, and the topic is going to be troubleshooting NAT and common performance issues on Cisco firewall products. That's going to take place Tuesday, December 14th at 10 a.m. Tokyo time, which is December 13th, 5 p.m. San Francisco. You can register for that live webcast at the following URL that's posted on this slide as well. As you saw from the upcoming webcast in different languages, we continue to expand in other languages. We also have our Cisco support community and our social media sites on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We have communities in other languages. If you speak Polish, Japanese, or Spanish, we invite you to ask your questions and collaborate in your language. And the following links are there for your Spanish, Polish, and Japanese communities. We're also running a pilot for Russian and Portuguese, and you can also register at the following links for those if you speak those languages. We also have remote support for Cisco partners and Cisco sales engineers during planning, design, and implementation phases of Cisco solution deployments, PDI Help Desk. And there's a list of the supported technologies. To open a case and for additional information, you can go to www.cisco.com/go/PDI Help Desk. This is going to conclude our session, but please, before signing off, do take a few minutes to complete the evaluation of today's session, and this will help us address your business needs and interests in the future. I want to thank our expert, Bhavin Yadav, for sharing his expertise with us today. I also want to thank the experts, Smita Nambiar and Mike Kornbaum, for answering some of the technical questions. And I want to thank all of you for participating today, and have a great day.
Perfect. Thanks, Francine. So I'd like to thank Francine for being the host today. Just a reminder that when you do close your browser, you will receive the evaluation, and we greatly appreciate your feedback. Thanks for joining, and have a good day.